Now, as the South African Council of Churches, what is your stance on the situation currently in Palestine and Israel?
We are horrified, really we are horrified. It's just unthinkable that 1,800 people could die within a short space of time in front of the eyes of the world, and there's not much happening about it. We think that we applaud the ceasefire that's been announced as of this morning, and we hope that it holds. But beyond that, we recognize that there is a lot more to be done to really bring sustainable peace. There has to be something to be said for what causes the current environment, and it is because of the occupation. Interesting comment made by an Anglican priest in Jerusalem who says that everyone talks about the right of Israel to defend themselves, and they say, in the case when Iraq invaded Kuwait, had they stayed there long enough and the Kuwaitis are trying to get them out of the country, would anyone talk about the right of Iraq to defend itself in Kuwait?
That's a difficult question,
It is a difficult question, but that's the reality. And this is why the UN Resolution 242 of 1967 did specifically say in the preamble that you cannot gain territory by invasion. And so the whole effort to try and bring peace to the Middle East, particularly in Palestine and Israel, has to deal with the issue of occupation and the reversal of occupation. But also, it means you've got to guarantee security for Israel. There is no peace without justice, but there's also no peace without security.
That's correct. Now, in your statement released yesterday, you said that if the Oslo Accord was followed, we would be talking a different language today. Why is the Oslo Accord so important, and how could it change the dynamics in Palestine and Israel today?
Outside three reasons, in my opinion. The first one is that it is the first opportunity there ever was to use different mediation other than the United States. The United States, it's very difficult because they're not neutral. They're very helpful, but they're not neutral. Admittedly, even the Oslo Accords needed the Camp David Accord to ratify them in 1995, but to start off with, it had to be done, it was done with the mediation of a smaller country, like in this case, Norway. But in that environment, there was a whole lot more participation. In fact, we know that a lot of the Norwegian churches were part of that process. And so it was a kind of an alternative mediation to start off with. Secondly, it created the environment for what we now have as a Palestinian state, however limited it might be. You couldn't have what you call the Palestinian parliament and the Palestinian state without the Oslo Accords. That's what created that.
Yes.
And thirdly, it made a case for a two-state solution, but also recognized that this has to be done in the context of the pre-1967 boundaries. Now, those boundaries are being violated over and over again with the settlements as well as the wall that traverses those communities. So that's why the Oslo Accords were much better. If they had been followed through, we may indeed have had a situation that's different today.
Now, you also say there are economic and political dynamics that are fueling the conflicts. What are some of those dynamics?
Well, to start off with, I mean, even the military industry depends on war succeeding. That's how they make their money. And there's a whole security establishment that depends on war to feed into it, to give it its trials. That's just by itself but there are also political dynamics. I mean, I talked about the United States. No president in the United States is ever going to succeed politically without supporting Israel, right or wrong, at any time.
And why is that, Bishop?
Because of the strength of the lobbyists. That's really what it is. Those are the dynamics that we're dealing with. And with all the goodwill. I mean, unless you've got an Israeli prime minister that wants to make a difference, even there, if they do want to make a difference, they can. And so you've got extremists both sides. You know, the Oslo Accords failed, and the Palestinian state therefore became weaker, and that's why you got Hamas voted into power, because they present an alternative. In the same way that the Prime Minister Netanyahu presents an alternative. So again, the extremists, both sides, begin to take control.
The churches were involved in the Oslo Accord. What is the role of the church today?
The World Council of Churches wrote to the United Nations Security Council last month, making a very strong case for the world to call for cessation of hostilities and for a peace initiative to start again. We believe that we need to follow through on this. There has to be really credible negotiations that can be done in good faith. And this must be done with a clear intention on all sides that they will guarantee there must be justice for the Palestinians, there must be security for the Israelis. This has to be done. And if the churches have to play a role in that, the World Council is available, the Vatican is available, the World Interfaith Community. You cannot do this without the world Muslim community participating in it. So I think if we were able to achieve that, we might just be able to get other things. The fact is that on both sides, particularly the extremists, they use religion as a justification for the war. And we can also accept that. Israel-Palestine is a place where all faiths have got stakeholders in it. And so we have an interest in ensuring that that religion is not used for negative purposes, but rather it is used for justice, which is really what it should do.
The two-state solution, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, Bishop, is that really a viable solution?
Well, the ideal, absolute ideal, as a South African I would have said, have one state, democratic state, and everybody votes according to what they want. Their differences must not be a reason for separating. We did not accept that in Bantustan. We shouldn't accept it today. But part of the reality that we have to live with is that those people do want separation. They want, I mean, the Palestinians want their own statehood. It's either they have a totally Palestinian-controlled state or you have a totally Israeli-controlled state. If you separate it, even if Israelis live in what are now occupied territories, they would have to accept that they will live under Palestinian authority. I don't know if it's viable, but we have to make an effort.
Now, you are also calling on churches to observe the week of prayer from the 21st to the 27th of September 2014. Tell us a little bit more about that and the purpose of that.
It is actually a worldwide call. It's part of our participation in the World Council of Churches call worldwide for prayer to soak this occasion, this whole conflict in prayer. That during this time, we would like to people not only to pray, but also to educate themselves on these issues, as well as to then prayerfully deliberate and suggest what best ways we can make a difference. But I think that we should also, I mean, the churches are also calling for relief support that can be given, whatever resources we can give. There are existing channels of providing humanitarian support. But underlying all of this is a commitment to do everything we can to re-establish international humanitarian law and the rule of law worldwide.
Bishop, thank you so much for coming and joining us here on AM News. That was Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana, the SACC Acting Secretary General Bishop, here in the studio with us. Now that's all.